Hello, everybody, and welcome. A very warm welcome here from us at Wediggit team to our webinar, the Zero Trust Cloud Security webinar, hosted by us and introducing the Wandera solution, recently joining Jamf. So a very warm welcome to all our guests. I'm Eric Bornstein. I'm the Wandera account manager here at Wediggit, and I'm very proud to introduce you to our company. Most of the people here and the webinar know us, veteran customers of us. We go together for a long time. For us, as you know, we're an Apple-focused company, driving success of businesses, enterprises, and we're growing cross-segment with the rise of the Israeli high-tech industry. And we pride ourselves with a very high satisfaction customer ratings, and we're very dedicated to technology and service. And this webinar here is focusing about the Wandera cybersecurity solution recently purchased by Jamf. Ourselves here at Wediggit, we are the Jamf Gold Partner sole integrator in the region, Israeli, Greece, and Cyprus. We're very proud to be working with this great management platform. Here we have our speakers today, Susan and Adam from Jamf, and we are 3 years consecutively the golden partner of Jamf. We're very proud of it, serving customers and this company. So today in our webinar, we're going to talk about Wandera and the cyber solution options that it gives now Jamf as a full ecosystem to supporting all its customers and partners. Facing the challenges of every modern enterprise. So our speakers are from the Wandera Jamf company. It's Susan and Adam. And guys, the stage is yours. We'll be very interested in hearing about Wandera.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks everyone. Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar. I'm Suzanne Sakaria. I'm the sales director here at Wandera, which is a Jamf company, and I'll be your host today alongside my colleague Adam Boynton. How are you doing, Adam?
Good, thank you, Suzanne. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you.
So, as we mentioned, we're here today to talk to you about how our customers are managing risk in the workplace today. We'll talk to you about the most popular threat vectors, how users are your weakest link, and what Jamf can do to help make sure that your users and your data stay protected wherever they are, whatever devices they're using. We're so pleased to see so many of you here today, and we want to hear from you. So if you have any questions, please use the chat, and we'll make sure that we answer them at the end of the presentation. But first of all, let's take a step back and introduce the company. Adam and I both work at Wandera, which is a cloud security company that Jamf acquired in 2021, in July. Wandera is recognized by Gartner, IDC, and Forrester as the market leader in threat defense and zero trust network access, which is of particular interest to Jamf as they look to expand their secure remote access capabilities. As you know, Jamf exists to help customers succeed with Apple. And for more than 18 years, they have worked to innovate, iterate, and grow alongside Apple to go beyond basic device enrollment and offer full lifecycle management of the entire Apple ecosystem with a portfolio of enterprise solutions. And for those of you who know Wandera, you know that we offer security and management of mobile data for your endpoints. Together, we help customers to securely connect to their corporate applications and data in today's evolving workplace, supporting over 50,000 customers with over 20 million devices. Wandera helps Jamf to expand their security portfolio to support not only Apple, but Android and Windows too. We have really reimagined security for the modern workplace by offering these 3 core services to help protect, manage, and connect users to their data. We'll be talking to you about these 3 solutions today. To protect, we provide endpoint and network security to combat the full spectrum of cyber threats, from zero-day phishing to malicious applications. We also help customers to manage their data connections with real-time visibility into usage by user, site and app, and even country to help enforce acceptable usage and prevent any unexpected overages that could cause high bills. And lastly, we connect your users to your business application securely wherever your data is hosted and wherever your users are with whatever devices they want to use. All of these services are provided via one end user application and one administration console to make it easy to manage and simple to scale. So let's dive deeper into each of these solutions, starting with threat defense. Now, when it comes to mobile, we sometimes hear from customers, I've got an iPhone, so I'm protected against threats, aren't I? And maybe you've heard that or thought that for yourselves. Well, that's not strictly true. While Apple is a very secure platform, especially compared to Android, there are a number of threat vectors that can harm the device that don't necessarily have much to do with the operating system. And as Apple grows in the enterprise marketplace, it's drawing the attention of hackers, and it's becoming worth their time and money to develop types of malware that can impact iOS. We can see threats at the device level. Perhaps it's a user that's downloaded a malicious application, or simply an application that's asking for a lot of permissions, like access to microphone or video or location services, for example. Maybe the user has jailbroken their device, or maybe they're joined to an insecure public Wi-Fi hotspot, so they could be at risk of a man-in-the-middle attack. And these are just the threats that we see at the device level. There's also the network level threats, such as data exfiltration, or the most common type of threat that we find on mobile, which is phishing. Now, many of you might provide training and education for your users around phishing and ransomware, asking users to look out for suspicious sites or be careful when responding to emails. As you can tell, a lot of the focus is still around email when it comes to training, but in fact, on mobile, over 80% of phishing attacks happen outside of email. They're through text messages or other messaging services like LinkedIn or WhatsApp. Hackers recognize that users are less vigilant on mobile devices than they would be on desktop, so it's much easier to trick users into clicking on malicious links. So Adam, why don't you show us how easy it is for a hacker to trick a user into handing over sensitive information?
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne. So just going to log into this console that we have here. So this is a tool that we have internally built at Wandera, now Jamf, that allows us to replicate these phishing attacks that we're seeing specifically targeting mobile devices in the wild today. By the way, we're more than happy to provide individual demonstrations of this platform and sort of go into more detail. Just contact the Wediggit team and we can help facilitate that after today's call. But for now, I'm just going to give a brief introduction to what this attack looks like. And then obviously we'll explain in a little bit more detail how Jamf protects against these type of things. So as I said, this is an internal tool that we've built. I can do a number of different phishing simulations, like Salesforce, Dropbox, Microsoft, for example. I think for this instance, I'm going to do a Dropbox simulation. Now, in order to launch this attack and for it to be successful, the only thing I as an attacker need is the device phone number. Now, I could either do a really targeted attack where I know the individual in question's phone number, or most likely, as what we see more commonly, is I have a list of mobile numbers that I send this to, and I just see how many people I can get to click on this link. But in this case, I know the individual in question, so I'm going to really sort of target this one. What should I put in here that makes it convincing? Let's check out your latest pay slip, something like that. So I launch the attack, comes through. Now, if I just open up, so this is my device, you can see on the right-hand side. If I click on this link, it takes me through to this site. Now, obviously, everyone on this call, I'm sure, would not click on that link, and we're all far too clever to know that this is not, in fact, a genuine site. But in my opinion, this is pretty convincing. It's got a secure padlock at the bottom there. It's got a very consistent look and feel to the Dropbox account that I do use regularly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and input some credentials. Now, you can put your pens and paper away because I'm not going to give you my real username and password here. But let's just say, for argument's sake, I input my password and I sign in. It's also now asked me for a two-factor authentication code. So let's just, again, for argument's sake, for purposes of this demo, I open up a third-party app and I generate this unique code to log in. Cool, so there we are. I, as a user, I've logged in. I then sort of maybe think nothing of it. I'll close my device, go about my day. If I go back to the Hackers console, what you can now see is I've now, as a hacker, captured username, password, two-factor authentication code. I can go to that genuine Dropbox site. I can now log in with the username credentials. If I do it quickly enough, when it asks me for the two-factor authentication code, I can input that code and I'll have access to this user's whatever information was in that Dropbox account. And let's face it as well, most users are sharing passwords and login for multiple different services that they use. So me as an attacker having this information, I now have access to potentially a very vast amount of sensitive data. In fact, Verizon did a study of all the data breaches that took place in 2019. 95% of them started with a phish or a phishing attack. And ultimately, if you're protecting your email or users from email-based phishing attacks, there's quite an obvious gap here if you're not sort of focusing or doing anything on the SMS side of things. So let's pivot back to the slides now and just start introducing Jamf Threat Defense. So Jamf Threat Defense provides protection in 3 areas. Like we said at the start, this is a multi-platform offering, so it's available on iOS and Android. There is some of this functionality that you can also get on Windows and on Mac as well. But if we focus on mobile initially, from a device security point of view, we provide protection against device-based threats such as malware. The most recent Pegasus malware in particular is something that Jamf Threat Defense has provided protection against for a number of years now. We also highlight vulnerabilities that exist on the device as well. So not just kind of telling you after the threat has actually taken place, but giving you a forewarning of potential vulnerabilities that could expose you in the future. We then provide internet security. So this is protection from things like phishing attacks. I'll showcase in a second just how we protect against those type of phishing attacks, data leaks, malicious traffic, ransomware. And we also have our conditional access functionality. This is something we can do natively or via integrations with other technologies, which we'll certainly explain a little bit more when we come on to our Zero Trust network access component as well. So regarding some of the examples of the areas that Jamf Threat Defense provides protection, when it comes to device security, I mentioned earlier that Jamf Threat Defense has a long-standing track record at protecting against the Pegasus spyware. This particular form of spyware, I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's a very sophisticated form of spyware that allows an attacker to gain access and effectively control a device. And up until recently, a couple of months ago, there was a vulnerability that was being exploited with Apple devices that allowed this spyware to be installed with no interference or interaction from an end user. So this zero-click malware, which is probably the kind of most feared form of malware that there is. Now, Apple were very quick to identify this, and eventually they were able to release an operating system that protected their users from this vulnerability. This was released with iOS 14.8. Now, what Jamf Threat Defense does is it not only alerted users if their device was infected and protected them from this Pegasus spyware, but also when these operating system versions are released, we send out alerts to users and admins if the device is running a vulnerable operating system. So not just telling a user their operating system is out of date, but more of a security-focused notification to ensure that they are running the latest and secure version of the operating system itself. Now, when it comes to phishing protection, this is probably what Jamf Threat Defense is best known for. Certainly within the industry, we have the best track record at blocking these phishing attacks on mobile. Now, if we look at the right-hand side, this is an example of the same phishing attack that we just saw, but this time the device in question is protected through Jamf Threat Defense. So when a user receives that Dropbox message and they click on that link, the site is blocked, they get a notification from the app, and within the application, they get a clear description and explanation as to why that site was blocked and what the security threat is. At the same time, an admin will receive a notification and the user's device risk level has increased. Now, how Jamf Threat Defense provides protection against these type of attacks now is very sophisticated technology, which is something we're very proud of here at Jamf. So naturally, with the kind of number and volume of mobile devices that are on the network over the years that we've been in existence, we've built up a significant database of all these phishing sites that we've blocked, which is great. But ultimately, for phishing attacks, most sites are only live for 24 hours before they're taken down because companies like ourselves are blocking them and they're removed from the internet. So for us, we needed to focus on catching these zero-day phishing attacks. So these are phishing attacks that haven't been seen or detected anywhere else in the wild before. So what we do is when a user on the platform goes to a domain or a URL that we've not seen before, we then run a number of assessments of that URL. So firstly, we look at, has a well-known brand been mocked? With Dropbox, we know every URL and domain that Dropbox own or that they've distributed. So if Dropbox is within that URL, but it doesn't match up to what we know to be a genuine Dropbox site, that's going to score highly on that component. We also know what a typical phishing site looks like in terms of how many subdomains are within it. Are there any suspicious keywords? Is it using a top-level domain that's not consistent with that site? Are there things like Punycode or Bitly, which are designed to hide or shorten the URL from the user's view and play? When was the actual domain registered? Because again, that's a key determiner for whether it's a genuine or not site. And essentially what happens, it hits a certain score within our algorithm here, and we then block that and classify that as a zero-day phishing attack. You as an admin team, a security team, can then review that within the console. You'll get a real-time alert, but equally you've got peace of mind that your users are protected from the most sophisticated form of mobile phishing. So just to kind of summarize, there are hundreds of different potential use cases for the platform, but at a high level, we've already touched on the ability to protect your devices from phishing attacks, in particular zero-day phishing attacks. Mobile is often overlooked, and it's potentially a massive sort of weak area when it comes to data being exposed through phishing attacks. So the solution is purpose-built to protect against that. We haven't really touched on it, but again, if you're interested in learning more, we can go into how we provide protection over insecure public Wi-Fi networks to protect against man-in-the-middle attacks in particular. Mobile malware is a growing trend. As we use our mobile devices more, we are ultimately seeing, and this trend increases year on year, the amount of malware that is targeted and focused explicitly on the mobile device. And equally, that kind of goes hand in hand with malicious applications as well. Being able to identify what threat defense allows you to do, and I'll show you in just a second, is identify the applications that are installed across your devices and whether there are any security risks exposed with them. So what I've done now is I've pivoted back to the console. This is a demo console of the Jamf Threat Defense solution in action. And if we sort of continue what I was just discussing there around the application sort of analysis that Jamf Threat Defense provides. So what our solution does is it helps a lot of our customers understand the risks that exist with the applications that their users are using. Most of our customers have a corporate-owned, personally enabled device ownership model where they own the device, but the user can install the applications of their choosing, which generally is the kind of most accepted and commonly used device ownership model. But what our customers then want to do is know, okay, what apps are users actually using or installing? Are there any security issues with these applications that we need to be aware of? So you can see on the left here, we have filters. So you can firstly just see all the applications that are installed. Obviously, this is just for corporate-owned devices. We don't have this level of visibility on a BYD device, naturally. But also, you can then play around with the filters. So if, for example, I wanted to see every application that has access to my users' microphones, I can then apply that filter and I can get a list of all the applications that have access to the microphone. Now, this may or may not be a concern to you whether an application has access to microphone or not. We've seen a number of examples over the years of applications which really shouldn't have access to parts of the device, yet they do. Most kind of notable example is the La Liga application. So this is an application which is very popular with our Spanish-based users. For those that don't know, La Liga is the soccer or football association in Spain. So their application is very popular. When it was installed onto a device, it asks for permissions, so it asks for access to your device location and asks for access to your device microphone. Now, these are pretty standard permissions that most users will accept without really thinking why the need for that access, and a lot of users did. However, what the app was doing was it was using the location information so that when a user walked into a bar, that location information was sent back to the app server, and that triggered the microphone to then be switched on remotely on the device. They were then listening in to whether that bar was playing the football or the soccer game, and then they were able to match up as to whether that bar had paid for a license fee to stream and to play that soccer game, or whether they were illegally streaming it. So pretty clever in some respects that they were able to clamp down on all these bars that were illegally streaming their product, basically, but equally massive breach on end user privacy. If they have the ability to listen in to whether the bar I'm in is playing a football game, what's stopping them from listening into my personal conversations, which clearly that's not why I'm using that application. So it's important to understand potential gaps there. What we also do, which is very unique, is we give apps a risk level. So a high risk application is going to be malware, which obviously you'd expect to be identified and flagged. We also have medium risk applications. And what we're highlighting here is not necessarily a malicious application, as you can see for the examples within this list here, but also whether the application in question is potentially affected by a vulnerability. So I've gone to WhatsApp as an example. Now, this is a particular version of WhatsApp that was affected by a known vulnerability, 2.18.80, as you can see there. We'll always provide a write-up of this vulnerability and a link to a third-party CVE, so you can get a breakdown of the actual threat itself. But effectively, this version of WhatsApp was exposing a vulnerability that allowed an attacker to gain access to all data and device functions to which the app has access. You can then sort of see within here what users have this version of WhatsApp installed in their device risk level, and then what permissions it has access to sort of while we're in there as well. So this is the sort of thing that we can do regarding application usage as well. So not just that kind of device and network security, but also that insight into applications and whether there's a potential risk with the applications your users are using. Cool. I'm going to pivot back to the presentation, and I think Suzanne's going to talk a little bit about data policy.
Thanks, Adam. Yes, so now we'll take a look at how customers manage their data, and there's a number of use cases here. Firstly, when we talk to customers about firstly, we need to recognize that users have just as much information on their mobile devices as they do their desktops, and they probably use their mobile devices more often now. So it's become imperative for customers to manage their mobiles in a similar way, such as setting content filtering policies to prevent users from having access to inappropriate sites, which would not only impact productivity, but could also be harmful to the company's reputation. Remote workers bring additional risks over and above content filtering, such as using excessive data, and that's because these devices have a data connection, and that's not something that we need to worry about on desktops. We want to make sure that users don't really mind paying the bill if their users are being productive, but they don't want to find out that they're paying thousands of dollars to let their users watch Netflix or go on Instagram all day. Roaming users can also become costly to the business, dependent on the countries they go to and how much data they use in these regions. And as schools and universities fast forward in their digital transformation and encourage users to embrace technology by giving out devices, they want to make sure that they are providing safe internet usage to their students. Jamf data policy provides granular controls to make sure users can do their jobs without the threat of unexpected bills or inappropriate use. Users are notified via the application, so they know exactly how much data they have and how far they are away from their limit and what their policies are, so there's no excuse for the users not to know how to use their data. This user education is key. Blocks can be set for users to block inappropriate sites or to restrict sites that use a lot of data so that you can only use them over Wi-Fi. You can set data caps to avoid going over data thresholds, but set exemptions for business critical sites so that users can still do their jobs with full visibility for the user and for the administrator through the application and through the administration console. Any changes that you make in the console will be reactive instantly with different levels of access for all the administrators that you need. So I'll hand back over to Adam and he can give us a tour of that in the portal.
Cool, thank you, Suzanne. So yeah, back to the portal. And again, just to kind of showcase some of the visibility that the solution can provide. Now, firstly, you may not necessarily require this set of functionality from a cost saving point of view. There might be some of you that aren't too worried about sort of what you're spending currently on mobile data, or there isn't necessarily a challenge there. But this solution does a lot more than just help when it comes to managing mobile data cost. Although naturally, if you do have challenges in that area, you'll soon see how this is ideal for providing protection against that. So what I'm looking at here, firstly, and again, I'd stress this is for your corporate-owned devices, is I'm looking at my sort of data management, data use across my users. So I've played around with the filter here, and I'm looking at the last 30 days worth of data. I can see some stats at the moment. I can see 469 gigabytes of data was used, and I've got a breakdown of the users that have used it. So this is the sort of information that you currently get from a network provider. They can tell you how much data was used last month and which users were responsible for that. Now, this is where Jamf data policy then sort of starts to kick in and provide value. What we can then do is we can show you, okay, we've got a user here that's used 35.8 gigs of data, which is quite a lot in most scenarios. We can actually see what they've used that data on. So have they been sending lots of emails? Have they been tethering their device? Have they been streaming video or social media on their cellular data, which is why they've caused a lot of data usage in the last 30 days. So you can identify these usage trends. You can look at it from a user point of view, or you can look at the entire business site and app usage and get a breakdown of that. If we take this example in iCloud as an example here, we can see that usage over time, and we can also see which users are responsible for it and how often are they using this. So you can work out pretty quickly, are they regularly using this service by the number of transactions, in which case it's kind of accepted, or have they just done one session where they've streamed or used a lot of data on that particular service. So we give you that visibility. We then give you the ability to apply policy to manage that data. So this is effectively the content filtering technology that we talked about. So there's a load of different policies that you can apply here. We have predefined smart policies. There's also a lot of granularity you can do with this. So you can set different policies for different groups of users, for different parts of the organization. So you don't have to have one standard policy across all of your users. You can also set different policy depending on the traffic interface the device is accessing at the time. So if we go to video and photo as an example, I can, as a quite commonly used rule, restrict services like Netflix. Now, at the minute, you can see I've just selected to block it over domestic and roaming cellular. So in this particular scenario, the user can access this over Wi-Fi. So it's not going to cost me anything, but the user can still access Netflix if they're in this group. If I wanted to block it entirely, I just select all network interfaces. And you can kind of get the picture. You can add your own custom domain, so you can easily sort of make this fit and tweak it to your organizational needs. What you'll also notice is we have a load of categories in here that, so if cost saving isn't a priority to you, you still most likely will want to ensure that the user is using a company-owned device in an acceptable manner. So we have categories such as adults, illegal, gambling, extreme. Now, this content can all be restricted and blocked, so users won't be able to access this type of content regardless. What you can also do is, say, for example, you want to block all cloud and file storage services from being accessed, but you have an approved cloud and file storage service, so maybe you're a OneDrive customer. So you might then say, okay, we'll allow OneDrive and all others will be blocked. So you can really start to customize this and make sure that the sites and applications that users should be accessing are blocked, and those that they do need access to are allowed. Just lastly, again, to showcase one of the other functionality that Suzanne mentioned, you have the ability to apply caps and usage thresholds. So if you want to sort of manage this area of the service, you can apply a usage threshold. In this case, I've set it to just over 6.5 gigabytes of data. I have an option at the threshold to set that to cap or to allow. If I set it to cap, then at this point, the user's data will be capped at 6.5 gigs. But then I have an allowed list of sites and applications that are always going to be accessible, even after I hit that cap. So as a user, I can still be productive. I can still use my device, but it's not going to cap me on business critical stuff. Equally, if I set it to allow, this puts a bit more responsibility back to the user, and they just receive notifications advising them as they're using their data if they are getting close to or have indeed exceeded their allowance. Cool. Let's jump back to the slides.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about Zero Trust Network Access. Now, many of you will have seen that Gartner has been talking about ZTNA for a few years now as a better way of helping to secure remote access to your business data. Gartner predicts that 60% of businesses will move away from traditional solutions like VPN in favor of Zero Trust Network Access solutions by 2023. 60%, that's a huge amount. So we've developed private access to provide conditional, secure, fast, and simple remote access to all of your business applications, regardless of whether they are hosted on premises or in the cloud. Jamf Private Access is a cloud identity solution with standard integration to Microsoft Azure or Okta. It's fully cloud hosted, 100% cloud hosted, and uses application-based microtunnels to connect users to the tools they need to do their job. Once you've configured private access, it can be deployed in minutes, and most users won't even know that it's there. User experience, performance, and battery life are all preserved. In fact, the instructions for end users are quite simple. They just log in. Once you've verified your identity, access to applications is seamless. When users pick up their device and use an application, private access instantly establishes a microtunnel where all communications with the servers are encrypted, connecting instantly using single packet authentication, which streamlines secure connections and reconnects seamlessly if there's a disruption. So you don't need to worry about your connection dropping and having to re-authenticate again. This allows the user to roam between cellular and Wi-Fi with all connections staying live. No need to reconnect to any of your applications, let alone a VPN when you go roaming. Security is further enhanced with risk-aware access policies to prevent compromised users and devices from gaining or maintaining access to specified applications. Continuous assessments mean that risk is evaluated all of the time, not just before the initial connection is established. And unlike most VPNs, personal data doesn't use these microtunnels. We have established split tunneling to ensure that business connections are secured while enabling non-business applications to route directly to the internet, preserving user privacy and optimizing your network infrastructure. Jamf Private Access is available for iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows. So it's not Apple only, but it is Apple best, especially when it comes to preserving user privacy. So Adam, do you want to talk about this in a bit more detail?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for us, the private access component is a lot more than a VPN, although it is often introduced to a business, the technology is introduced as a VPN replacement. And that's kind of where we have built this, is identifying that customers and organizations have issues or limitations with their existing remote access technologies, which ultimately most of the time is a VPN, and they need a solution that is sort of superior to that. And one of the big things that we focus on is the security elements of our service. So for those that know Zero Trust Network Access as a concept, we will be very familiar with the fact that security and zero trust is kind of built into these type of technologies, and Jamf Private Access is no different. So first and foremost, it's an identity-centric security model. So we integrate with your identity provider, and this is done at the first point of installation for the user. they only have to do this once, but that sets up a continuous integration with your identity provider. And this is to ensure that only authorized users can access your business applications. Secondly, we're connecting and setting up app microtunnels. So we're only connecting the user to the application and to the data that they actually need access to. So we're not exposing the entire network, so we prevent any lateral movement. What you can also do with that is you can ensure that these authorized users are only able to access the applications that you authorize them to access. So just because they are a member of your organization and they've verified their identity, doesn't mean they automatically have access to every single one of your applications. In fact, if someone's in your engineering team, you can limit them to just access your applications for your engineering team. They won't be able to access your finance team's applications or vice versa. Then what we do is we look at the endpoint that the user is coming from. So we've verified their identity. We've ensured that this is an authorized user. We now look at this endpoint they are trying to access from. And if this endpoint is considered to be a security risk, you can then deny access to your most sensitive business applications. Now, what you define a high-risk endpoint is entirely customizable. So, for example, you can do really simple stuff like is the device running the latest operating system? Is the device managed by Jamf Pro? These can just be the basic requirements if a user wants to access any application. Or you can look at really sophisticated stuff like, has the user clicked on a phishing link? Are they connected to an insecure Wi-Fi network? We also can look out for third-party security tools that you might already invested in to ensure that the device is the most secure and set up correctly. And then to kind of take it one step further, what we also can do is when a user goes to access an application, if they're using Jamf Private Access, they will come from a fixed set of IPs. You can then create a conditional access policy, which is very popular with Office 365. You can do this for any SaaS application, where you only allow access to that application if that traffic has come from these set of IPs. So it protects you from account takeover attacks. Again, it's another way of enforcing that only authorized devices can access your applications and your data. But really just kind of helps to ensure that if a user is accessing this most sensitive data, they're doing so from a secured path, a secured channel, and on a device that is meeting the security requirements that you are expecting. So just to kind of summarize how it works, and again, this is the sort of thing that we're more than happy with the team at Wediggit to really go into kind of the details around how this works, but at a really high level. As I've said earlier, we have the application on the endpoint that integrates with your IDP. We then, by operating as a DNS server, set up a dynamic split tunnel. And then you as an organization determine what route you want traffic to take. So for business applications, you would typically send that via our access route on the left, which is would send traffic to our software-defined perimeter. We then perform these zero trust assessments. So we check, is this an authorized user? Are they allowed to access this application? Does their device meet the security requirements that have been set? If everything checks out, then the user connects through to the application. You can then set up those IP lockdown and app cloaking policies we talked about for the cloud apps. If you have any on-premise applications, it's a really simple IPsec tunnel that we set up to connect to typically the firewall or wherever the application is hosted. And then you can send the remaining traffic, non-business application traffic, to the Jamf Security Cloud, where we can do all of the threat defense and content filtering that we spoke about briefly earlier when introducing the other functionalities that Jamf now provides. This option on the right is exactly that. It's an option. It's optional. You don't necessarily have to take advantage of the Jamf Security Cloud in this respect. A lot of our customers, for example, deploy this technology on a BYOD device, or they may already have an existing set of technology that's doing some of the stuff on the right already. So if you aren't interested in sort of generally in monitoring the general internet traffic, then it's very sort of user privacy focused. So the business applications will just hit the edge, but all personal traffic will remain untouched. So there's a lot of options you have when it comes to this remote access tool. And yeah, it's a solution that we're very proud of. We all use it internally. I know that this is one of the kind of big drivers behind the Jamf acquisition for our of Wandera, and it's something that we're already seeing a lot of interest and popularity amongst the Jamf customers, not alone the Wandera customers that we've already got using the platform. So I guess just to kind of wrap things up now, and really reconfirm where these new set of technologies that we've introduced today fit alongside the existing Jamf ecosystem. And if we go back to those slides we talked about at the start, the connect, manage, and protect, manage, and connect components. Those that are already familiar with Jamf will already hopefully be utilizing great products such as Jamf Pro, Jamf Protect, and obviously Jamf Threat Defense is a nice kind of extension there. If you're already protecting your Mac devices with Jamf Protect, then why not sort of introduce Jamf Threat Defense to extend that protection to your iOS, iPads, and Android devices as well. Then when it comes to the network security, the kind of content filtering component is that logical next step. If you are providing that endpoint security on the device, you want to make sure that the internet use that these devices are and users are using is done safely and securely. And then lastly, when it comes to Connect, again, Jamf have a great solution in place with Jamf Connect. Jamf Private Access integrates very well with Jamf Connect. It's going to help you achieve kind of this passwordless access to business applications in the future. But also it just gives you that zero trust network access that you most likely will be looking at if you haven't already to replace your current remote access technologies.
Thanks, Adam. That's really helpful, and hopefully that's been helpful to all of you. So we've got a few questions that I wanted to go through before we let you go. And the first one is, doesn't my MDM solution do this when it comes to security? We get that question a lot, don't we, Adam?
Yeah, I think in my 7 years at Wandera, it's probably the one that's come up most frequently. Do you want to answer it, or shall I?
Yeah, so I guess the easiest way that we try to explain it is that your MDM is there to secure and manage your physical asset, whether that's a laptop or a phone or whatever it is. And what Wandera is doing is securing and managing the data on those devices. So they're actually complementary solutions rather than competing technologies. And there is a level of security that an MDM will be able to provide in that they can remote wipe your device if it gets lost or stolen. But when it comes to the threats that we've been talking about today, those phishing attacks or man in the middle, there's nothing that any MDM can do there because they can't see the data in transit. So if you're looking at a complete security solution, you would have an MDM in place to secure the device, such as Jamf, and then Wandera also in place, or Jamf Threat Defense, to make sure that the data is protected as well. Is there anything that you'd add there, Adam?
No, I think just the other thing to note is naturally through the acquisition, there's a really strong tie-in with this technology and Jamf Pro and Jamf Now. However, we still are MDM or UEM agnostic in terms of the technology. So yeah, if you are using an alternative solution in that space, we still have the same level of integration with the likes of Microsoft Intune, like Endpoint Manager, MobileIron, Workspace ONE, etc.
Now, there's a question about our ability to detect threats such as the spyware that we see in certain applications that could be from organizations such as the NSO and the government. And these applications do sometimes make it into the app stores, don't they, Adam?
Yeah. Again, this is not just an Android threat. Have found examples of malicious applications on iOS app stores as well. Generally speaking, though, the app stores do a pretty good job at sort of ensuring that malware doesn't make it onto app stores. Most mobile malware is encountered when users start downloading applications from third-party app stores. But there have been a number of examples and more than enough examples of malware making it onto the App Store that definitely warrants the kind of need for additional tools to be ensuring that the applications users are using haven't been infected or have the potential to be infected, which is what we saw with the WhatsApp vulnerability that I kind of highlighted earlier.
That's great. Well, thanks so much. Those are all the questions that we've got for today. We appreciate your time and hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much, guys. That was very, very interesting, a very deep and comprehensive overview of the Wandera, which is now part of the Jamf platform. I want to thank you, all the attendees, for joining us. We would be very happy to do a POC or another meeting about this solution and see how we can assist you. So thanks again for our lecturers and the attendees for joining today. Thank you and have a good weekend. Goodbye.